What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Chris, this is 4K Motoring, and today we've got another product review installation video for you. This comes from another Chinese company. I know you're seeing a theme here with these YouTube videos. This one comes from Nilight. This is the company that sells a lot of off-road lights on YouTube. They seem pretty decent quality, kind of reminiscent of rough country, that sort of thing. So they're not high-end by any stretch of the imagination, but for the average person, the average day-to-day rider, the average day-to-day user, they're probably perfectly adequate. What they've sent me is a set of their motorcycle LED lights. This is a kit of, I believe, 8 different lights. You can see some different sizes there with an included RF remote. It's got the control box, everything there. It's RGB, so it's got all different colors and some different patterns. We're gonna go ahead and install this, not on the multi-strata, not really the look I'm going for on the multi-strata, but for this Yamaha MT-03, just to give it a little bit extra visibility, set it off a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and try and install this kit, and we'll see how it goes. If you guys have noticed a trend in some of these videos, I'm not too thrilled with a lot of the products I get sent. Some of them work really well, and a lot of them are just kind of lackluster at best. This kit here seems decent. I've wired up LEDs on motorcycles before, just straight 12-volt LEDs, no fancy remote controls or wiring harnesses, anything like that. This kit here, when I read the reviews on it online, I do have the link in the description below, there are a lot of the generic 5-star reviews where people are like, oh, this kit's so cool, I haven't tried it, but it's so cool. A lot of the 1-star reviews, and there's a lot of 1-star reviews, say kind of 2 themes. One is that if connected just straight to your battery, it'll just turn on randomly and just kill your battery. There's no way to turn it off. It won't let you turn it off. And the other complaint is that the LEDs will burn out and this thing won't last more than about a week. So I'm going to go ahead and test both of those. I'm going to install this. I'm probably going to install it on a 12-volt ignition-based source, not just a straight battery lead. That way we don't have the even possibility of this killing the battery. I'll see if that works for us. And then I'll also give it a week or so of actual riding and usage just to see if this thing will last longer than a week like everybody says it will. So let's go ahead and get into installation. This should be a pretty easy kit to get into. Here is our kit. We're going to go ahead and open it up and see what's inside. There's a QR code. There is instructions for the actual remote control, what it does and how to function all the different modes on it. And then there's some basic instructions. Again, we're going to find just a power and ground source. It says it has an inline fuse that we're going to test. It has a built-in controller. The controller looks like a harness that will go out and connect to all these lights. We've got 2 longer ones, 4 medium-sized ones, and 2 short ones. Here is the kit. Here's our controller and our remote control. Here is, looks like double-sided adhesive for the mounting box and fuse and some wiring leads. We've got our main wiring harness, which will run from kind of the battery area, I'm assuming, to somewhere on the bike. That gives you just a little bit of space. These don't have a super long reach to them, so I'm interested to see where you're going to be able to plug these into. Being RGB, they do have larger connectors, so they're not going to fit through tight spaces. So let's see how this works. I've worked on this bike before. Whenever you're working on a bike, especially getting into the inside of it and doing some of these double-side jobs where we're going to be mounting things like this, taking a bunch of panels off, having it on a rear stand is hugely beneficial. Pit bull stands are some of the best that I've found. I'll leave a link to those in the description below. Not sponsored, just something I use often and found to be super reliable if you don't have one already. We're gonna go ahead and pop off our rear seat, which will let us then pop off our front seat so we can get to the battery. And then we'll see where is gonna be the best spot to mount some of these lights to really give us the best visibility. All right, guys, well, behind me is at least half the bike done. I've got the left side done to at least my content. And overall, what I've got to tell you is this kit is about $30 online. 30, that's it. The adhesive used on these pads are lackluster at best. They're not great. I don't really anticipate them holding on by themselves. What I found is if you put them by a frame structure, some bar or something, you can put a zip tie around at least one end. It's probably going to help you out quite a bit in keeping these things attached. The wires also aren't super long. I had quite a difficult time with the actual splitter where it had that 8-way adjustable splitter going from the front of the bike right up here to the point right at the base of the tank where it's all located. I have the lights off, so I'm going to turn this thing on just so you can kind of get a feel for it. It's got a couple modes, a couple flash patterns. This is what I ended up with. I've got the small one right inside these, so it kind of looks like it's almost breathing. Kind of has some flame shooting out of these fake induction vents. I've got one of the 6-inch strips, one of the medium length ones, right behind the engine right there to kind of cast a nice little hue on it. And I've got another one of the medium length ones right on the bottom, so you really get a whole front end of that motor kind of on fire sort of look, whatever color you choose it to be. There's not a whole lot of options around the rear, especially on the drive side, but I did put the long one right on the back under the bike. I know that's kind of visible from the rear, which I'm okay with, but there's nothing really to tie this one to, so I think I'm going to have to screw it in or put a couple holes I can put a zip tie because it just won't stay stuck even after cleaning this surface and applying a little bit of heat. So we're pretty much done installing. We're wrapping everything up, getting it all back together. What I found is that, like I said, this kit is only $30, so you can't expect a whole lot from it. From that, the adhesive, like I said, lackluster. Something to assist that. I've used a bunch of zip ties. I've used a little bit of Gorilla Glue on just a couple of the ends, just as a couple little dots to kind of keep things steady. You can use some other 3M adhesive and attach to it. There's lots of ways to go about this, but make sure you have some other means of attaching these things to your bike or at least securing them, because that adhesive is not going to last very long. The wiring is actually pretty easy. Like I said, you can go straight to the battery. It comes with a positive and negative wire with inline fuse. It comes with some battery connectors if that's what you want to do. I ended up on this MT-03 going to the running light wire, which is the blue wire. So the Yamaha has a yellow wire, a blue wire, and a black wire going to the rear taillights. Black is obviously ground, as is normal. The yellow is going to be your brake light wire, so it only activates when you hit the brakes. The blue one is going to be your running light that whenever the bike is on, it turns on. So that's the one we went with. We patched over to our box right here, which we're going to secure with a couple of more zip ties just in place. There is some included adhesive, but you know my feelings on that. So we'll zip tie that in place. The wires then run under the seat to where the joint is, kind of right at the bottom of the seat. And pretty well, aside from the rear of the bike underneath, most of the LEDs are hidden away pretty well. Can't really see them. They don't really draw attention to themselves. If we turn the lights off here, we can turn the bike on. There we go. It starts red, and then it will default to the last setting, which is this purple breathing pattern. Again, it's still pretty bright in the garage, but overall, I'm pretty happy with the way these turned out. I've got this one set that's not the same color, which is a little worrying already, and this is only the second or third time I've turned it on. So let's go ahead and, with the remote, cycle through our A button, which is colors. There we go, now they're all synced together. So that one's already doing its own thing, which is a little bit concerning. Let me try unplugging it and plugging it back in, see if that gets it in line, but it's already a bit worrying because it's already doing the wrong color. So it turned out that was actually a pretty easy fix. So And this is what I imagine probably happened with most of those reviewers that said they had particular lights burn out or particular light colors burn out of certain segments. The connectors that put these pieces together, the little connectors right there, they are not very positive in their engagement. And what I mean by that is when you clip them together, there's no real notification that you have them fully seated. And if you don't, as I found out with this particular light, it won't engage some of the pins. Some of them will work, but some won't. So the blue pin on this one was not engaged, so it wasn't giving me anything that involved that blue color. All I had to do was unplug that and make sure it was plugged in correctly. And that wiring harness for that particular light that ran back to the 8-way splitter, once plugged in, worked just fine. Like I said, that is one of the only ways I really see an entire light segment burning out. If the blue lights on this entire strip burn out at one time, it's probably the actual connector. And the flaw is probably actually from stretching out that connector because the cord is not very long. Hopefully, once we've got this nailed out and got everything put back together, making sure it still works, making sure none of those cords are really pulled that tight, and making sure that we've connected to a 12-volt ignition source, not the battery itself, we've now eliminated both of the potential issues listed in the 1-star reviews for this product. As far as the killing battery, that RF remote's probably a common frequency, but when it's only working when the bike is on, you're not going to kill the battery. And for the light segments burning out, if it's an entire color burning out, it's very unlikely that every single chip in that particular light strip went out at the same time, so it's probably a connector. Again, we went through all our connectors and made sure they were actually connected fully. We're going to give it a week or two, that way we can make sure that we ride it for a little while, subject to some heat changes, some vibrations, and we'll see what we think of it after that time. Well guys, I'm happy to report that after about a week and a half of testing, temperatures of mid 80s down to about low 40s, so pretty wide range, a lot of bumpy roads, a lot of highway stuff, a lot of around town stuff, just to really make sure we got some heat cycles in this, some vibrations, that sort of thing. What I can tell you is this light kit really does work well. For the low price that it is, I'm pretty impressed with it. It has the memory function, it does retain whatever the last setting was, seems to work well. Again, we have it connected to the light circuit, to the tail light, that way it doesn't run our battery down when the bike is off, as I've seen some reports, which means you can't leave the lights on when you have the bike just sitting and parked. But if you're concerned about the batteries dying, you wouldn't do that anyway, so I don't think that's really a big deal. This adds a great deal of visibility to this bike, especially from the rear, the way of those lights positioned. And overall, I think it looks pretty cool for this little MT-03. One thing I would say to those people that left those reviews about certain lights not coming on anymore or certain colors not activating anymore, what I found is that is most likely your connector is not fully connected. These connectors don't have a very positive engagement, so if you're not really careful when you connect them, you may not have them connected exactly right. And if you do that, it's going to leave out some colors and not follow the pattern exactly like you want it to. So just make sure every connector is connected properly and is secured to the bike, that way you don't have that issue. Again, this was a kit by Nilight. It was a set of motorcycle LEDs. Again, I'll leave the link below for the Amazon listing. It is very inexpensive and very easy to do yourself. Like I said, all we're going to do is find a positive wire that we're going to work with, and like I said, for me it was the rear taillight wire that was easiest for me to get to. Wired this system in. It does have the included remote control with a cover on it, which I do like. That way all the buttons can be covered up when you're not using it, so nothing gets pressed accidentally. You can set your colors up. You will need something to help with the adhesives. Like I said, I used just a dab of extra glue, some super glue on there, just on the corners to make sure that it stayed put, and a lot of zip ties to make sure everything stayed tidy. With that in mind, everything mounted up really well. It's not distracting to the rider, and it looks great from the outside. I very much do like when I find kits like this that are very inexpensive and that work. I am overall pretty happy with this. There's a couple tweaks I would like to make these perfect. But again, for the low price that you're paying, I don't think that's a turn off from these things. I think it's still a really good deal for what you're getting. If you guys have used anything like this before or have any specific kits that you recommend, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about other ones out there so I could test them out. So far, these are working pretty well for me. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.